Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Cage Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. I'm recording this on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are reserved for hot or controversial topics pertaining to Star Wars. And so today might be controversial. Now, everything I'm about to say is my own opinion and is not meant to be an insult to anyone else's opinion or an insult to anyone personally. I'm just going to give you my unabridged opinion on the nature of the Star Wars franchise. So let me begin. In the past few years, we have seen a rise in online negativity toward the new Star Wars movies. Now, let me just say it's the internet. People are going to be negative because that's just the natural state of the internet, because the loudest voices online are, I think, the ones that make the most noise. And how does one make the most noise, you may ask? Well, typically by complaining. See, the news has a similar problem. But that's their job. The news's job is to report on the major events. But unfortunately, that means that the loudest voices make it to the news, rather than focusing on the majority of people. The minority gets the attention. So I believe that those who are complaining about Star Wars and whining about it now are not the majority. Now let me back up a little. I'm not talking about internet trolls. As Taylor Swift once sang, haters gonna hate. Therefore, I will say trollers gonna troll. They're gonna troll. People are gonna troll at everything. And they're not the people that we need to be worried with. I'm just talking about, in general, I have seen negativity from fans. Now, why is there negativity? Well, typically it's because they don't like the new movies. Starting with The Last Jedi, and then, unfortunately, Solo's financial failure has not eased their concerns. And also, let's face it, did Solo really need to be a theatrical film? I love Solo, but I don't know if it really merited that. It wasn't the big event that I had hoped it would be. But that being said, it's okay if you don't like these new movies. That's totally fine. And that's not the issue here. The issue, I think, is the rise in negativity. And I just mean that I think all this trouble, the trolling attacks, the financial troubles of Solo, the divided opinions on The Last Jedi has caused a large number of online Star Wars pundits to become very negative and very pessimistic in their talk about Star Wars. Several of my shows that I really enjoy listening to or watching on YouTube that have to do with Star Wars have also been taken over by this wave of negativity. Now, I don't want to turn this into a let me insult another podcaster, or let me insult someone else who's doing what I'm doing in another part of the internet. I think that it would not be good of me to turn this into a so-and-so said this, I'm going to attack them for that. No, no. No, no, no. And I do want to say just briefly, if you are concerned about the negativity and you want to hear more positivity, check out Force Center. And check out Madison Thames. Check them out. They were, despite what's been going on, despite the rampant negativity, they remain optimistic and positive without being blind to the troubles that are out there. But they enjoy celebrating Star Wars in all its forms. Unfortunately, a couple of the other shows that I listen to have gotten very negative. And I fear that in almost every single one of their last few shows, the conversation devolves into a let's bash the new movies. Or not bash them, but let's say that what we're disappointed about. And that is completely fine, but when that's all they can talk about, I think that's the problem. The reason I started this podcast was because I was tired of all the negativity. I wanted to celebrate Star Wars. Now, it is okay to be critical of movies. You've heard me be critical of the prequel trilogy. But I love Star Wars, regardless. And I want my conversation with you about Star Wars to be optimistic, to be positive, to celebrate what we love about Star Wars and not what we hate. Now, there are some legitimate points that can be made about the problems with any film. And you know me, I love the new movies. All 4 of them I've loved. But let's be clear, I still don't like everything about them. Just as I don't like everything about the original trilogy. And I don't like everything about the prequel trilogy, but that's okay. And yes, it is important to be constructive in criticism, that is true. But I believe that sometimes we just need to take Star Wars for what it is, and not what we hoped it would be. Because that's not going to change anything. If I were to sit around all day and say, man, they could have, I hope that they had done Attack of the Clones better. That's not an unreasonable hope. It's just, I can't dwell on that all the time. The movie exists as it is. And like all art, you can either love it or hate it. That's your right. You can say, I like this, and you can say, well, I don't like this part, but I do like this part. That's your right. But wishing that it were something else is not going to magically erase it from the movies, from the Star Wars saga. It's kind of like the Mirror of Erised in the Harry Potter books. If you look into the mirror, you see the deepest desire of your heart. But Dumbledore explained it's also dangerous. Because if all you can do is sit there and look at what you most want in that mirror, you'll lose your mind. You will become so fixated that it's going to drive you mad. it's better to just move on. Now, this does not mean that we are not allowed to criticize these movies. It just means let's enjoy them for what they are, or not enjoy them if we don't enjoy them, and that's fine. But let's not try to say, let's make a list of what they could have done better. Actually, you know what? Let me rephrase that slightly. There's nothing wrong with saying, here are the things they could have done better. You know, the acting could have been better, this scene could have been better, this might have been shorter, yada, yada, yada. But to say, I could have done it better, oh boy. Now, we've all done this. We've all sat around and said, well, here's what I would have done. Some of us have even attempted to write our own scripts. Or our own stories about what we would have done. This is particularly true of the prequel trilogy. Now, that's all fine and good if we have our ideas. But the one thing we need to remember is we can never say, I could have done it better. Because the answer to that is, unless you're a professional filmmaker, and unless you've actually done it, then you can't really talk. Because I could sit here and say, I could have made a better prequel trilogy, I could have written a better prequel trilogy, I could have directed it better, I could have done this or that. Better than George Lucas, who was an actual filmmaker. I'd be kidding myself. Because I'm not a filmmaker. I'm a film scholar, yes, but that does not mean that I could automatically make a better movie. But let me also explain, you could write a script and say, this is a great script, this is going to be great. But as I am fond of saying, the proof is in the pudding. You actually have to take that script and you actually have to make it come to life. And maybe you think it's great. The script is great, but if you don't direct it right, if you don't edit it right, if you don't do those things right, you are not going to be able to take that quote-unquote great script and turn it into a great movie. So when we say, I could have done it better, that's easier said than done. And I fear that that is all too common among us. Now, there's totally nothing wrong with saying, well, here's what I would have done. But to have the hubris to say that we could have done it better when most of us are not professional filmmakers is quite vain. And let me also just end with this. And I hope I'm not being too negative here. I want to be positive about this. Some of the backlash that you are seeing to the sequel saga movies, episodes 7 and 8, but also Rogue One and Solo, is very similar in my mind to what we saw with the prequels. People saying, oh, Star Wars is dead. General interest in Star Wars is going down. I actually heard somebody say that yesterday. Or things like, well, that's going to ruin it, or that, they can't recover from this. They have no idea what they're doing. I could have done it better. Gee, does any of this sound familiar to those of you who are old enough to remember the prequel era? And what cracks me up is that after the prequels, George Lucas became possibly the most demonized man in Hollywood. He became a pariah, an outcast. Let's blame George for everything. George Lucas this, George Lucas that. He messed this up. He did this. He ruined our childhoods. He yada yada yada. And now people suddenly love him. Even the people who gave him grief all those years ago. Something is suspicious. And I think maybe it's because many of the complainers found something else to channel their hate into the new Star Wars saga. And now George Lucas is no longer the pariah that he was those years ago. Now we shift our hate to J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy. Pretty much the same reaction to them that we gave to George Lucas. But let me end on a very positive note. I am very happy that the prequels are getting more love. And this is not because I love them, though I have to admit I do like the Phantom Menace in Episode 3. And the Revenge of the Sith. If I had to say, do I like them or dislike them, I like them. Given those two choices, I should say. Attack of the Clones, unfortunately, I don't like. But, regardless of my feelings about the prequel trilogy, the fact that I really despise Attack of the Clones, and am okay with Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith, I'm glad. So glad that the people who love them are coming out and saying, we love these movies. It's so wonderful, I think. Because I think it demonstrates that we older, jaded fans, I think we didn't really understand the effect that these movies would have on a younger audience. A lot of the folks coming out and saying, I like the prequels, are younger, who grew up on the prequels. That was their Star Wars. And I think a lot of the older fans who have maybe gone back and re-examined the prequel trilogy. And I think that because this generation is now grown, they are able to come out and say, this is my Star Wars. And more people are being proud of their love of the prequels. And I am so glad that that's happened. And I suspect that those fans who grew up with the new movies, that these 4 new films, soon to be 5, are their first exposure to Star Wars. They're going to be loud and proud about their love of them when they're adults. Hopefully drowning out some of the more negative voices. Now, I don't mean that we should drown out people with a different opinion. I just mean that I hope that there's an abundance of positivity around these movies when this younger generation grows up. And may I remind you that in general, in a vast majority, these new movies are loved and embraced by people all over the world. So, if you're ever feeling like the negativity is overwhelming, just remember that there are more people who love these new movies than don't love them. And regardless of what the new movies do, regardless of the disappointment of the fact that people were disappointed by the prequels, the fact that people are disappointed by the new movies, in small numbers, I should say. This can never take away what made the originals great. So those are my thoughts on the current state of things in Star Wars. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you hear is my ventilator, and thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.